Welcome to Beer and Business. You found the best podcast for entrepreneurs. We serve crafty business knowledge, comedy, and yes, beer. And now it's time for our hosts. If he were to pat you on the back, you'd list it on your resume. It's Jake Mullins. And his beer never gets warm. It just sits there, staying frosty, waiting for him. Mr. John Winnie. And if you spell his name in Scrabble, you automatically win. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Darren Flanagan.
Folks, welcome back to the Beer and Business Podcast.
There
Darren,
we go.
Are you okay? You're squinting at the screen.
I know. I should probably have my glasses on. It's like, what? Like, I can't see that massive thing.
Well, we are here live in the studio, and we are joined by Jake Doherty. He is the head honcho and co-founder of Deri Dari. Welcome to the show.
Well, guys, thank you for having me, Darren and Jake. It is an absolute pleasure to be here today.
Well, we're excited to talk to you. You got a really cool story, and you're coming to us all the way from Bavaria, Germany. So,
correct.
Through the magic of the interwebs, we are talking to you live over video, which is really cool.
Almost as far as Dancho, but Dancho's got him beat by distance
by a few miles.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So we really appreciate you joining us. And we want to remind our fans, if you're listening to the show, which obviously most of our fans listen, you can interact with us live. So
really?
Yeah, you can watch us live. All you got to do is follow us on Facebook or follow our YouTube channel. And if you'd like to watch the show live, you can. And the really cool thing about joining us live, Jake, is people can actually ask questions or make comments, and we can respond to those real time on the show as long as they're appropriate. So, if my name was Darren Flanagan and I made a comment, it probably wouldn't get read. Because we all know how Darren is. So
it's 9 o'clock in the morning already. Really?
Yes, it happens early. So yeah, please follow us on Facebook. You've got a reason to do so now. It's not just weird posts. You can watch us live and you can interact, and we'd love to do that. We want to grow our audience and give you guys another way to interact with the show.
And YouTube.
And YouTube, yes, the YouTube channel's there. And believe it or not, we're not banned right now.
They love us again.
YouTube likes us. We're actually showing up in search, and we're getting recommended, which is really weird. So I guess we should probably stop talking bad about them.
I know. I'm used to positive attention. I didn't realize how good it felt.
Yeah, it's weird. So anyways, before we get into your story, Jake, we also need to talk about this delicious beer that we're drinking.
Oh, man.
Darren.
Thank goodness.
We are, this is part of a well-balanced breakfast. So it's 9 o'clock in the morning here. It's 3 o'clock your time. But we are drinking Color and Beer. It is a white IPA, Darren.
White IPA. Yeah.
What do you think about this one?
We've talked about this before. I like it. I like it a lot.
Yes.
This is a good, well-balanced, delicious IPA. Not too hop forward. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things I like about it.
It's also a little dry, too, which I like that characteristic in an IPA.
Mm-hmm.
And this one comes in pint cans, Jake, and you can actually color it, which is great. At the brewery, they have little markers there, and if you order one of these, you can sit there and color the can while you're drinking it. It's a lot of fun.
Didn't have one last night, though.
No, I didn't. And what happened last night?
Oh, last night was our network event.
Yes.
Thank you for everybody who turned out. Thank you to Line Creek. Thanks to
the taco truck.
The taco truck. Yeah, the Cuban truck.
Tico
oh my
taco.
gosh.
Yeah.
Ooh, yummy.
Yes.
Yummy. We're doing that again, aren't we?
We are. So every month, the second Wednesday, come join us.
Yeah.
If you're in the area, come out to Line Creek Brewing in Peachtree City. The next one is Wednesday, September 8th. It's from 4 o'clock to 6. You should definitely come out. There's no better way to meet a new client or a new business affiliate or something than over a delicious beer.
I like the fact that we still see some regular faces repeat, but we see new faces every time.
Every time. I made 2 really good contacts yesterday that I'm going to meet with today. And, it's phenomenal. So you should come out and join us. It's a lot of fun. And even if you don't meet a client or something like that, at least you're going to have a delicious beer.
Yeah.
And you can make fun of Darren, which,
why not? Beer or seltzer. If you're not a beer drinker, they do serve seltzer, too. They make some good seltzer.
Yeah, absolutely. So come join us. And, again, support Line Creek Brewing, the official beer of the Beer and Business Podcast. If you can't make it to the brewery, just go to the store or your local bottle shop and pick up a 6-pack a 12-pack or all of them. I mean, just support the brewery. All we ask you to do is drink delicious beer. It's kind of
just
easy.
there's that one beer that's going to be coming out. And it's like I don't want people to buy it up because I want it all.
Yes, we do have something
Super
very,
special.
very exciting to announce soon, and we're going to leave it at that.
Yep.
All right, so Jake, really interested to hear your story. So you were born and raised in the U.S., but you now live in Germany, and you've lived in Europe for, I believe, 22 years. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I'm originally from South Louisiana, a little town called Lafayette. And then I went to college in Atlanta, Georgia, hot Atlanta, during the Olympics and all that fun stuff, all that jazz, as they say. I went to college at Oglethorpe University, where I double majored in history and philosophy. Got done with university and was offered a job at Taco Bell. Wasn't exactly the career path I wanted. So
Okay, hold on
I went
a
back
second.
home.
You went to college for history and philosophy?
Yeah, I didn't have, basically when I went to the career counselor and she said, what do you want to study? I said, history and philosophy. And she said, well, what do you want to do with that? And I said, I'm going to be the world's best bartender.
Well, there you go.
There you go. Okay.
Actually, just in the short amount of time that I've talked to you in our initial screening call, and then before we went live today, you clearly have not only did you get educated in history, but you obviously have a passion for it because you know what I would call a shit ton about history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, what ended up happening was I went back to Louisiana and then always studied European history. And so I decided I was going to go to Europe. And that was 22 years ago. My mother helped me get a job working for the American military in a little town called Garmisch-Partenkirchen, Germany, where my first job was cleaning toilets, which I wasn't very good at. I just didn't have the joie de vivre for it, so to speak.
Well, at least you weren't cleaning toilets at Taco Bell.
Very true. Very true, Jake.
Now
That would have been...
That would have been the end of a career.
Wow.
Exactly.
I don't ever want to work again.
Oh, goodness. That must be a job. You must have some atomic cleaning materials. But, yeah.
A chalupa and a crunch wrap?
Let's not pontificate on that, okay? We'll move forward.
That's a really shitty topic to talk about.
Double pun. But no, so yeah, I started working with the American military in Garmisch-Partenkirchen in one of the recreation facilities. I did that for a year. And then I started traveling. I was in Austria, Italy, Switzerland, Holland, and Germany. But that town, Garmisch-Partenkirchen, I kept coming back to it. And in all those travels, I mainly worked, as I said, as a bartender. But at the time, people were still smoking everywhere in bars. And I used to ride bikes. I used to be very fit. All that was great until I got married. So then, I got a little bit bigger. And I couldn't handle the smoke. I started suffering from asthma. I was always short of breath. And so I went to the doctor and she was like, you probably have sports asthma from being around so much high toxic air. So
Was your
I quit
doctor
bartending.
smoking when she said this?
Yes, she was. While drinking an IPA from Line Creek. Yeah.
Nice.
But so I quit the bartending gig, and I at the time owned a bar, and so I sold it. And I needed a job. And I was always good at history. I always loved, I was very tactile. I loved to go study history, be around it. And so I started working as a tour guide, first for a short period of time for the American military. And then I went out and worked in Munich for a little bit. And then after a couple of years of doing that, I thought I could open my own business. I did. Yeah. It was successful for about 2 years, and then I sold it. It's a long story. It's 22 years, guys, 22 years. And then I ended up moving, after I sold my business, to a beach in Italy. I sat on a beach in Italy for a while, and then went to Ischgl, where I taught skiing for a little bit in the border of Switzerland and Austria. Yeah, and then I came back to Garmisch, and I was broke, and I needed a new job. So I got one of these perfect little jobs running an office, happy as could be, mountain biking every day, skiing in the winter every day. And then I met my wife, and she was from here. She was a good Bavarian girl, and I had to woo her for quite some time before she finally said yes. And eventually we decided to get married. The first thing she told me was I had to get a real job. And I knew I was a pretty good tour guide. And my non-comp had expired with the other business that I had. So I reopened a tour guide agency called All Things Garmisch. And I was very blessed in the sense that when I opened that business, it was right as TripAdvisor was becoming a thing. And I was the first private tour guide service that spoke English reviewed on TripAdvisor for all of Germany.
Oh, wow, man.
Holy
That's
cow.
cool.
Yeah. That was really
So
cool. It's just
that must have kept
luck.
you busy.
It did. It kept us very busy. So almost immediately, as they tell you in business, you want to reinvest, always continue to double down on what works. And so I ended up opening a second business called Bavarian Beer Vacations, hence the knowledge of beer. And I started taking people to the Oktoberfest and to the Stark Beer Fest and to Krampus, one of my favorite events every year. And we do a 3-country ski trip and that kind of stuff. And it was great. 2 years ago, I had a staff of... During high season, I have a staff about 8 people, and we had two vans, a Mercedes, Vito, 7-passenger, and an Opel Popel wagon that could hold 7 passengers, and life was good. And then came, of course, COVID.
Oh, I could see it coming a mile away. That's just awful, man.
Oh man, it was just like waiting to be knocked out of the park. Yeah, COVID was horrible. I at the time was. My wife and I decided to take our first trip without the kids. I have 2 daughters. One's 10, one's 7 years old. And we decided to take... I did. Don't tell my wife. Don't tell my... Shh, Jake. Don't. Okay, this cannot be watched by my wife. But no, so I ended up taking my wife on our first trip without the kids. And we went to South Africa to visit some friends. And that was February. And by the time we got back in March, people were running to the hills.
All
And
hell
by
broke
middle
loose.
of, oh my gosh, by the middle of March, I remember sitting exactly where I'm sitting right now and signing paperwork to give back close to 37,000 euros in deposits for trips, vacations, and tours. We had lost in confirmed bookings almost 220,000 euros.
Wow.
Confirmed
Wow.
bookings. And this took about in 1 week's time.
Wow. Did Germany
it was
shut
bad.
down like Italy did?
It
No,
did.
'cause
Everything shut down.
It was like you can't even leave your house. Is that how strict it was in your town?
There was curfews. You couldn't go out after 9 p.m. You couldn't, if you had to go to the grocery store, only one person could go. Every store was closed except grocery stores, gas stations, and drugstores. And that was it.
How long was it like that?
It happened twice. So we had it right then in March. It began in March, April, May, and then beginning of June. And then things kind of opened up a little bit. And then they closed again, and they opened up again, and then they closed again, and now they're talking about closing everything down again. So
Oh, geez.
I just don't know anymore.
Wow.
It was bad.
Do you have any inkling to reopen the travel business again?
Well, as the story continues, I did a little startup, which is going to be what we'll be discussing in a second. Now, as
Right.
far as all things Garmisch and Bavarian Beer Vacations, yes. I have set it up so that I can reopen those. I never closed them down completely. I simply mothballed them.
Okay.
And in fact, we have already taken bookings for Krampus, our next big trip. And it's scary because, you can't ask for deposits. You can't
Yeah,
make
it's
hotel
so weird.
reservations. You
Wow.
can't get, everybody's on eggshells. They're like, wait a minute, if the next strand of COVID comes out, we're all canceling. And so
How do you
really a
manage
challenge.
that? I know we're going to get into your next venture,
no
but
problem.
how do you manage? Like, what did you do before when you were open running the travel agency to now? Did you change your style of management or your operations some way, shape, or form? What's that look like?
Well, completely. One thing that happened, Darren, was the first thing was we had to increase our costs, what we charged. Let's say that. So when I had a staff of 8 people, using a calendar and booking agency called Fair Harbor, we had a very great piece of technology that could set up everybody's calendar, and we could run tours, literally 2 to 3 a day. And for us, it was mainly going to Neuschwanstein Castle. So we would be going to Neuschwanstein Castle every day. And we'd all take turns so we wouldn't go crazy talking about, Walt Disney! And so, it's Disney! And so, yeah, we did that for a while. Well, here comes COVID. And the first thing I had to do was let everybody go. So we all got together, cracked open a couple of good beers, and said goodbye. We all
I
knew
hate
it was
this.
coming.
Yeah, we've heard so many stories locally, and of course, friends around the world, and and hearing your story, you had a really great thriving business, and you haven't closed it, but you lost it, and you weren't able to count on it. No fault of your own. This had absolutely nothing to do with your skill, your commitment. You just happened to be in one of those businesses around the world, chose to shut down and eliminate travel and fun. Boom, your business model can't exist. And
It was
I
scary.
hate that, man. I hate that.
It was.
But the reason why we wanted to have you on the show is because you found yourself in this situation and literally nothing you can do about that. And so what next, right? You actually decided to innovate and you started something new. So once you realized that this was happening, this was going to be prolonged, nobody knew, and nobody knows today how much longer we're going to be dealing with this crap. But at some point you said, I got to do something. And so walk us through that.
Well, it started on my couch wearing the same dirty pair of underwear for 2.5 weeks with a beard that, would have made a lot of people proud at a trimming
Belongs
store.
in
So to
Mumford
speak.
and Sons.
You got it. And like I have, no hair on the top, but I have a little bit on the side. So I had like that kind of clown hairdo going. It was great, watching a lot of Friends reruns and crying a lot. My wife,
It sounds like you were at Darren's house.
yeah, Darren and I could have bonded. We should have
Still
been on
happens
Zoom.
every day. As an entrepreneur, we all spend time crying
Yeah,
every day on
a
the
lot of
couch.
that. Are those
So,
tears of
yeah.
joy or sadness? I don't know.
What did Ross just do? But yeah, so it was hard. But my wife, she's from here. She's Bavarian, and she is very Bavarian. And as Darren can tell you, the Germans, they're very rigid, very strict. And so she came into the living room. She goes, "That's enough. You're done. You've had your time to wallow. Get out." And so she kicked me out of the house, and she basically said, "All right, now go get a haircut." And I was like, "I can do it myself." She goes, "No, you're not. You go get a real haircut." And I was like, "Okay." And so everything was closed. So I went to my neighbor, and she cut my hair real quick. And then I came back home, and my wife said, "Go take a shower." I was like, "Yes, man, I took a shower." So I took a shower, and I came out, and she had already called a couple of my friends. And with everything locked down, meeting with your friends was very hush-hush. And so we had to basically make sure that we were in only groups of 3 and that kind of stuff. And so we got together, 3 of us, because my wife made us. And she basically said, "Okay, now you
Bit of a pattern.
guys have fun." She's like, "You guys have fun." And so, "Mach Spaß, jetzt." And I was like, "Yes, ma'am." So we started hanging out. And it was a friend of mine who owned a restaurant, and another friend of mine who is also a tour guide. And a friend of mine who owns a restaurant was lamenting about how he had to let his staff go and how he was losing all of his chefs. And the other friend of mine who was a tour guide, he and I started discussing what the future of travel looked like. And we had already been approached, myself and this other tour guide, by several what's called OTAs, online travel agencies, to try and pivot into virtual tourism, where you would take a phone or a camera and be like, "Come and look at this wonderful castle, Disney!"
Yeah.
But I just didn't see that working. I mean, that's a YouTube video.
Yeah.
Not even a good one. It's not even a good one. So I was talking with a guy who owned the restaurant. I said, "What are you doing with all your chefs?" And he's like, "Well, it's nothing. I'm letting them go." And I was like, "Aren't you afraid you'll never get them back?" He goes, "Oh, yeah. Most have already left. They've already moved back to Italy. They've already moved to Austria, wherever they can find work." And I thought, well, wait a minute. What if we did a live, interactive cooking show where people could literally be on a Zoom call or a similar platform like Zoom and hang out with a chef while they're in their kitchen cooking? And that chef could give them advice and pointers and suggestions. And also what we could do is have the ingredients for whatever it is you want to cook delivered to your home. So let's say you want to learn how to make, I don't know, really good penne abarata or deconstructed chicken pot pie. That's the example I always use. A deconstructed chicken pot pie.
I don't even know what
Okay.
a deconstructed chicken pot pie is.
Sounds good.
I know, I'm in.
You take everything, instead of putting it in the pie, it's all broken out, probably. I'm guessing.
That sounds about right. Honestly, I don't know. That's Chef Joshua
He's like, I
Northcutt.
don't
He's on
freaking
our
know. I just
platform.
run the company.
Yeah, Josh, he told me that when he was like, "This is one of my favorite, biggest selling, experiences." I was like, "Wow, that sounds really good." And so I've just been using it as an example. And what it is what will happen is you go to our website and you see Chef Joshua Northcutt. You read about him. You learn a little bit about him. You can watch a video where he talks to you about his cooking style. And then he's got that deconstructed chicken pot pie right there. And you can click on it, choose a date and time. And if you want, you can choose any, all, some, or none of the ingredients you might want for that deconstructed chicken pot pie to be delivered to your home before the actual live interactive cooking show. And then on the date and time of your choice, boom, right there on our website, embedded in our website, is our video conferencing software, so that Chef Joshua Northcutt is right there. You have your own chat feature. You guys can talk, hang out for as long as you need while you make that chicken pot pie together.
Wow.
That's actually really cool.
It's a one-up on some of those other services, I'll tell you. It really is. Because, they'll send you the ingredients in a card, and it's like, do this. But with the chef right there and being able to ask questions, it's like, what's the difference between julienne and just chopping and slicing, and how long do I saute this? And he's like, do I want my butter to be this brown? It's like, no, pour it out, do it again. That's awesome.
So let's
That's
step back.
the fun part about it.
Yeah, let's step back. So we've got the concept. So how did you guys come up with this idea? Because I think it's brilliant.
His wife told him to do it.
Well, and other than being forced into innovation by a very strong Bavarian wife, how did you guys come up with the idea? Because this is one of those things where I've never heard this before. So clearly this was something you guys thought up.
Well, what ended up happening there is I came up with the foundation of it myself, just sitting there with those two friends. Let's do interactive cooking shows. And the first idea was, let's do schnitzel, and so I was going to do schnitzel where you could hire a chef here in Bavaria to cook a schnitzel with you with asparagus and Bavarian roasted potatoes. And so we started doing some beta just to see how it worked. And once I realized I could piggyback off of larger ingredient delivery services in the United States so that I could ensure that your ingredients were delivered to your home before the show, it's like, well, wait a minute. Now we have a whole nother avenue of revenue. So I started playing around with who I needed to bring in to make this work. And luckily, being a tour guide for so long and being a guy who just, I don't know how to say this, but I got a lot of friends. I started looking around to those people that might fit the mold that I needed to help build this program. And one of them was Anthony Bandolin. Anthony is a full stack programmer. He worked for Booking.com as one of their head programmers. And then he went out. Now he's working in Berlin. He was at the time working in Berlin for a very large banking company. And so I went to him and I was like, do you think we could build a website like this that could do this? And he's like, oh, yeah, and I'm going to do it. And I was like, oh, cha-ching. Wow. So now I got Anthony on board. He and his husband, they were in Berlin. Now they're coming back down here to the Garmisch. And so that was key to have him because we needed somebody with the technology and the knowledge of the technology to make it work and keep it running.
Right.
And then the other thing I needed
software
was...
Software is really cool, too, for your video software. That's awesome.
Huge. That and then the shopping cart, to be able to have the ingredients priced right then and there so the customer can choose the ingredients they want, see the pricing, and then right there with one click, it's a 4-step process, have the ingredients delivered to their home. That was ingenious. I don't know how Anthony got that done. That was pure genius.
So was he somebody that there's a couple of things here that I want to get into, but before we get into that, now, was Anthony a part of the business? Did you bring him in as a partner, or did you just, did you contract his services? How did that work?
Well, Anthony and I have known each other for years. And in fact, when I first moved to Garmisch-Partenkirchen and was cleaning toilets, Anthony when I left that job, he came in and started working for the same company. He became one of the doormen at the same company I was working for on the American military base. And so he and I were friends for literally 20 years. And I kept in touch with him. And so when I was in the travel business for a while, he was in the travel game. And so we would pass clients back and forth. And I knew of his skill as a programmer. And in fact, I'd relied on him several times for some of my other platforms, such as All Things Garmisch and Bavarian Beer Vacations for little fixes for my websites and that kind of thing. And so I knew he was going to be the first person I asked, can this technology be built? Or can I find a plugin? Can it be done? And when he said yes and he wanted to be a part of it, I was like, great, you're a co-founder, done. Come on in. I trust you with my life, you and your husband both. And I know that you have the skills. So yeah, please, if you want to be a part of this, I welcome you with open arms.
Especially, you
But
said he's a full stack programmer, right? So
You
he
got it.
covers all platforms and handles probably some of the engineering. That's
The
incredible.
whole
right there.
front end, back
Wow.
end, everything, XP, all of it. And then what ended up happening is we were still missing a key component. As you now know, when I mentioned the deconstructed chicken pot pie, I don't know how to cook. I mean, I can make a really good gumbo, and I can make a pretty decent etouffee, but that's about it. So when we started realizing we're going to be working with chefs, we needed a chef who had the skills to get other chefs, to recruit other chefs,
Right.
but also the skills in the technology world to help integrate them to this platform. Because we were building it similar to what I call an OTA, an online travel agency, where these chefs would onboard, put in their information, have access to their back side of the website, where they can input all their information that they need to put in, what their course is going to be, the ingredients, all that kind of stuff. For a lot of chefs, that's kind of challenging. So I needed a chef who could recruit new chefs and teach them how to run and work within the confines of Deri Dari. Luckily, there was a chef here in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, an American who had also worked for the same company that Anthony and I had worked for, who at the time that I went and spoke with him was running 6 restaurants in the Alps. And I said, hey, this is what I got going on. Would you be interested in being a part of it? And his name was Jonathan Graver, and he said yes, and I knew we had the dream team right there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right there. Yeah.
Jonathan's well known for making those giant beer pretzels. I don't know if you've ever. No, that's just bullshitting.
Hold on. I'm just dreaming of pretzels. I've been to Germany several times, and God, those pretzels are amazing. All right, so there's a couple things that, first of all, just to commend you on, and we've talked about many times on this show, you came up with a minimum viable product. So you had an idea, but you said that you kind of beta tested this, and you were bouncing the idea off people to figure out, is there a market for this? Because anytime you get into creating a product that hasn't been done before, and in this case, I've not heard of another company that's done what you guys are doing. You got to figure out, are people willing to do business with you? Is there value in somebody paying for that product? And you guys did that, right?
We did. We did a beta, and then we turned around, and once our finished product of Deri Dari, the website, was operational, we had 7 chefs onboarded. We then did a new beta in the city of Philadelphia. We did limited marketing to see just where our actual market, our key demographic was. Mm-hmm. And we did that in Philadelphia for about 6 months. And then I took it shopping, and I put it up on a couple of startup pages, a couple of angel investors, that kind of stuff, to see if there was maybe some more money we could pick up, because we basically bootstrapped this whole thing. Yeah. We won several pitching competitions, including the International Business, what was it called? The World Business Angels Investment Forum. We were chosen out of 2,500 startups to be one of the 4 selected for potential investment. And then right about that time is when all the COVID shots started coming out, and America started opening back up. And so we had a pretty good profit, pretty good margins. Things were looking good. The sky was starting to get pretty blue. And then suddenly everybody was going back out to restaurants. And we knew that was going to happen.
Yep,
right. I was planning on it. I was waiting for it. And that's where we are right now, is we are moving into phase 2 of Deri Dari. So we are still making profits, but we've seen that lull. I have purposely put all of the angel investors on the back burner. I've actually been keeping close contact with many of them, telling them exactly what's going on, but I don't want their money just yet. The reason being is I have something on the burner that's going to change the game. It's going to change the game.
They are a little pushy sometimes when their money's on the line. They're like, okay,
exactly.
We need
so
you to
produce.
So.
Well, the thing was, when we sat down, the 3 of us, and we started building out the business and what we saw as our 3-year projections, the first step of Deri Dari was always going to be these live interactive cooking experiences coupled with ingredient delivery. That was the foundation, always. And it's still going to be the core of our business. Mm-hmm. But phase 2, and we pretty much timed it for 1 year after launch, which we're about 3 weeks off the schedule right now. And that's just simply due to some bugs in the platform. But phase 2 was always going to be the next step, which is I don't really even know if I want to talk about it yet, but it's really going to be fun. It's going to be, I'm just going to give you a hint. It's going to involve instant access to a chef. I want to be able to give you, within 30 minutes or less, access to a chef in your kitchen.
Look, there's Chef Darren in the bathtub.
This
Today
close.
Like when Darren's panicking because he's got a date. He's like,
so imagine
shit.
if
I need to do something. I need a chef. I'm told
So
her
imagine
I
if
can cook.
Darren tries to make that deconstructed pot pie and he decides to put everything inside, but now he's got to get it outside of the pot pie. I want to give Darren access to a chef within literally minutes.
Wow.
So that's where we're moving towards. And with that as a foundation of Deri Dari, we're going to move into a whole new market, which is going to, we've already got people knocking on the door as far as investors for this particular phase of it, and I'm super excited by it. And we are finishing up the build right now for the website and the technology to get it running. So
Cool.
It's going to be fun, and that's going to happen in the next 4 weeks. So that's
awesome.
where I'm running with that at the moment.
I've got one comment and one question. So I was on your website yesterday, and I will say this. I like the fact that when you go to your website, on the bottom right corner, it says, is there anything not working on this site? Tell us. Like right there, it's in your face. You guys want to know, you don't have to search for somewhere to put in comments. I really like that. That's like, you really care about your business and you want this thing to get better quickly.
It's 2 things, Darren, that we've done there is 3 things, actually. One, at any given point, you can contact a chef. At any given point, pre-purchase, purchase, after purchase, you can contact a chef and speak to them. We want you to have that familiar conversation with the chef before you have to shell out any ducats, before any money is exchanged. We want you to be able to say, well, I don't know what a deconstructed pot pie is. Tell me about it. And Chef Joshua Northcutt could right then and there, using our platform, using our chat feature, communicate with you. 2, we have the same availability. If you want to talk to me, you go to the very bottom and you hit info@deridari.com. It goes to my inbox. Now, not just mine. It also goes to our head of marketing. It also goes to our head of PR, but it also goes to mine. I read all of those. And I take the time to answer many of those emails that I think, of course, forward my attention. We want you guys to have access to us at all times.
That's great.
So, you know, some days I sit in front of a computer just reading through emails about, boom of sales. I get that one like every 2 days, or we can fix your SEO, but it's worth it for that nugget, that one person who writes up and says, well, I really, really want to just simply learn how to cook my grandmother's pasta primavera, and I've got the recipe, but I know I'm missing something. Can you help? And I like answering those and say, I know the exact chef, the perfect person for you.
Awesome.
And I put her in touch with Chef Rebecca, and Rebecca, who is an exquisite Italian chef, is going to go through that recipe and go, oh yeah, here we go. Let's fix this. We can work this out.
Oh,
and I like that. I love being able to do that. That's one of my favorite parts of the job.
Do you have wine pairing like suggestions for each of the
We do.
dishes too?
You got it. Our chefs are so smart. And yes, if the chef doesn't know, we give them access to all the other chefs. So all the chefs, we have 2 different Slack feeds. And I'm sure you guys know what Slack is.
Yep.
And one is specifically for the chefs. And so they can communicate with each other. So at any given time, if there's a wine pairing or if there's a dish that a chef doesn't have the answer to, they have their own Slack feed where they can go up to another chef and be like, hey, Chef Johnny, this doesn't seem right that I'm talking to this customer right now and she's looking for a red wine that I've never heard of, something Italian, I don't know what it is. Maybe you know because you lived in Italy. And he'll be like, yeah, it's probably this. So we give that open communication.
You said you targeted the U.S. You started with the U.S. You're international now, or are you still just focused only on the U.S.?
Our plan was to move international as fast as humanly possible. I really wanted to get into the GCC region. The Gulf Coast countries, I think that's a market just waiting to be exploited, especially for our product.
Oh, yeah.
The ease of ingredient delivery, the environment, the heat, the oppressive heat that a lot of those countries suffer from during the summer months, forcing them to stay indoors. And the desire for international cuisine is just, it's ripe for us to get over there. And it's going to come. But I put that on the back burner so that I could finish phase 2. I become very focus driven. And so right now I want to get this instant access or near to instant access of a chef finished, and then get that beta out and moving with how I'm going to sell that, how I'm going to package it.
Right.
And I'm going to use the United States. And in fact, we're so dedicated to it. Chef Jonathan Graver, who was running those 6 restaurants here in the Alps, he just moved back to the States. He's going to be our man on the ground. We needed a founder in the United States for phase 2, and he's there. And so we're going to get that running. And then almost immediately, I'm going to the GCC. I'm already looking for investors over there, talking to a couple of different people in Bahrain and a couple other countries. So, yeah.
Well, I think, part of that, I mean, you're dealing with currency exchange as well when people are making their purchases and buying things, and you've got to, when it comes to pricing, I'm sure you've got a lot to take in, and being an internet company, do you have to deal with, are you going to have to deal with different, sales tax issues from each of those countries? I know some places implement it and some don't. They're like, well, you're online, you don't have to worry about taxes. But here in the U.S. years ago, remember that with like Amazon and stuff? It's like, no, you still got to pay sales tax in these.
Well, you didn't for a while, but now you do.
Now you do.
Right.
So is that something that you're finding that you're going to have to encounter?
What we have done in that respect is I've outsourced most of our collection of funds, payment of funds, etc., to Stripe. So any of those taxation questions go through them. Now, for the business itself, I have brought in an international attorney who is helping us to basically navigate those waters. Bahrain, we are open to go there. Saudi Arabia, we're open to go there. And Kuwait, we are open to go there. Germany, Austria, Italy, European Union, that's no problem as well. What happens is our third-party payment portal handles that for us. Now, as a C Corp registered in the state of Delaware with the title of Global, we do cover our butts on that respect as well. The biggest thing was insurance, just making sure we have the insurance coverage we needed when we started wanting to make sales overseas.
I like
so that somebody couldn't come back and bite us and say, well, we burned our tongue.
C Corp out of Delaware. Global.
Absolutely.
Where else would you ever want to establish a
business? Why do you think so many corporations are established in Delaware? Because of the corporation laws. So let me back you up again, Jake. I want to talk to you about the brand. This is something we haven't talked about yet. So Deri Dari, where did you come up with that brand? What does it mean to y'all?
It's a very close meaning to us. It's very personal. When we started looking for a name for the business, we went through several, and we had settled on something to the extent of "What's for Dinner." And we even bought the domain name. We were ready to go. Then we brought in our attorney, and he immediately squashed that idea. He's like, listen, if you...
Cold
this
water.
is a bad idea. And we're like, well, what if it's What's for Dinner? I mean, this is the perfect name for what we're doing. He goes, no. The reason being is that would be hard for us to incorporate. It would be hard for us to register, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
he said, come up with something... Yeah.
It's so common. It's such a, and for those that don't understand, what he's saying is, a phrase like that, "What's for dinner?" If you wanted to actually protect it against infringement and trademark, that's one of the things that the what's the association that approves trademarks? I'm totally drawing a blank.
The U.S. patent, not U.S. patent.
It's not the patent office.
It's trademark office, isn't it?
I think it is. I cannot remember the official name. Anyways, if you went to trademark something, it'd be like, that's such a common thing that people say, you can't possibly own the rights to it.
Right.
And that's the issue.
Oh, there's another beer.
Now, hold on.
What's he drinking?
What's going on there in Germany? What do you got?
Shh. You guys weren't supposed to see that.
His wife is listening.
Look at this.
I'm currently drinking a Paulaner Münchner Hell. And so if you guys know anything about beer, Helles is Helles just simply means a light beer in German. And in fact, I could go and look outside the window right now and say, it's ganz hell. It's really bright outside. But Helles is just the traditional name for a light beer in Germany, which is the foundations for lager in America. In fact, the word lager doesn't mean beer. You guys probably know this. Lager just means to store something on a shelf.
And now he's pouring his lager out of a very old brand That's one thing I love about Germany. We were talking about this before.
Doesn't
we
have a
started the
boot, though.
Easy, easy, easy. He pours like me.
He does pour like you.
Another Jake
Another
that
Jake.
pours like shit.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is great.
Man,
Look at
you
that.
guys just pour violently.
It's the name, Karen.
It is.
It's my name.
Oh, is
that's
that,
the problem.
that's your excuse?
If your name is Jake, you pour beer like shit. And he was a bartender, for God's sake.
He was pouring
I
nicely.
gotta
and then
have
he was
head on
getting
my
a little
beer.
showy.
Yeah, it's got to have head on the beer. It's got to have head on the beer.
At
There's a
least-
reason
at
for
least
that too.
An inch and a half. Yeah.
I feel
Hold on.
justified.
Tell people, why do you have to have head on the beer?
Twofold. One, it protects the flavor. It's a flavor saver. It's a seal. And then secondarily, it tickles the lip when it goes down the throat, tickles the nose. Now, the real reason, though, here in Bavaria is it lets you know the beer has not gone bad.
Yes.
Real beer has live yeast in it, has live wort. So at least there'll be live bacteria, live yeast. And what will happen if a beer goes, as we say in the United States, skunk, or if the beer, the yeast aggressively attacks the malt sugar, or the bacteria aggressively attacks the malt sugar, one of the first things that'll go is the head. And so when you pour the beer and there's no head here in Bavaria, they're going to send it back because they think the beer's gone bad.
Or they just didn't rinse their glasses well enough.
See, you didn't realize
the other thing.
You didn't realize how
Very
brilliant
true.
I am. That's the problem.
Jesus.
Very, very true.
I'm getting sick of my belly.
You should be getting sick in your belly.
RJ.
All right, so
Yeah.
I interrupted
Deri
you.
Dari.
Yeah, back to Deri Dari. I interrupted you because I wanted to make sure people understood why what's for dinner was an issue, because this is a common thing that people
Correct.
come up with is, what do I call my business? And if you get too far down the path, which you guys were smart to engage a lawyer right up front, it probably saved you tons of time and money, because you wouldn't want to do this, start the business, and then later on go, oh shit, this is a bad brand name. Now we got to rewind, rebrand, and all that stuff. So you didn't do it. So with that
Exactly.
aside, what brought you to Deri Dari? What was the significance of that?
Well, I just want to reinforce what you said there, Jake. You getting advice early on when you are a startup is key. You do not want to run, as we say, half-cocked into this game. You want to have mentors. You want to have advisors before you actually start putting money on the table. And that is 100% correct. Thank you for that, Jake. Now, as far as Deri Dari, where the name brand came from, it was something whimsical. We were told to find something whimsical that was easily trademarked. And so the bar around the corner from where we all lived when we all worked in Garmisch-Partenkirchen and Kirchen was called Deri Dari. And I did a little research on the name. Deri Dari is actually a very old term. It comes from Italy, and it means a cash payment, a payment for services. And then what happens is during the 30 Years' War between 1618 and 1648, there was no cash because everybody was dead. And so most payments were done as a barter
that?
or a trade.
A war.
Yeah, there's that. Everybody was dead.
Kinda what
Yeah,
the-
that whole plague, war, starvation thing.
Yeah, whatever.
Whatever. But so Deri Dari became to mean sort of like an exchange of services. So in other words, Jake, you wanted to buy a beer from me. I'd be like, yeah, we come on Deri Dari machen. We'll make a little Deri Dari, or you'll come and make sure those glasses are clean so that there's head on the beer. And so it was an exchange of services. Yeah.
That's really
and then
cool.
it went back to meaning cash. It still means cash in Old Bavarian today. So like a cash payment. And so we just thought it was a nice name for the business. It was whimsical. It had meaning to us. It was a place that we stumbled out of many, many a night. And also the bar had closed. So there was no copyright infringement on our side of the pond.
Yeah.
And when we decided to move to Germany. So it was a perfect name. And
Thank goodness it
meant
was
something.
from that bar around the corner and not, your favorite spot in the red light district in Amsterdam. Came in first service.
I met a hooker once, and her name was
Deri Dari.
Jolene.
not a good idea for the name of the business. But here's something interesting, and I think that this is worthy of a conversation. I learned about this when I was doing the startup at AT&T, and we were going through branding exercises. Jake, we were coming up with a new brand for a national wireless carrier in the U.S., and we brought in some of the best brand companies in the world to help us. And they have a term, and of course, as we're sitting here talking about it, I forget what the hell it is, but there's a term for a brand that's essentially a blank slate. It doesn't mean anything. And those are some of the best brands to build. So, for example, just to put this into perspective for people, like Nike. Nike didn't mean anything until that brand was established, or Zillow. Zillow is a brand that what the hell is a Zillow? It's nothing, but it's a term. It might mean something to founders or whatever, but the term doesn't mean anything in the English language. And so therefore it's like, oh, okay, well, it's just total blank slate. And the only correspondence people have with that name is back with the company. And it makes it very easy then from that point to trademark, to come up with marks that are very easily protected and that sort of thing. And essentially that's what you guys got with Deri Dari, was kind of a blank slate to work from a branding perspective, right?
Correct. And one of the other great things about the name Deri Dari is inevitably on every interview I do, whoever's interviewing me has to say it at least 2 or 3 times before they get it correct. And so the name gets said at least 3, 4, 5 times every single interview. They're like, so is it Deri Dari? Deri Dari? How do I say it, Jake? I'm like, oh, it's Deri Dari. Deri. Dari. That's how you spell it, Jake, in case you're curious. So yeah, in other words, I get to say it at least 3 to 4 times on every single interview.
Here's the other brilliant thing about brands like this. If you're watching the video right now, which I encourage you, if you're not, to go watch our stuff.
You should have them
the
tell them
website
how they
is
could
actually
submit questions too right now.
Yeah,
That would
the
be cool.
the website is actually on the screen, and it's deridari.com. So one of the great things about these blank slate brands is that typically the domain name is wide open, and you can go buy it for $10. You know, so it's like if you were able to get the domain what'sfordinner.com, I'm sure somebody's like, hey, I've got that, and I want 10 grand for it. Because it's a very common, and believe me, from a guy that's searched for domain names and bought several, like this is a thing. But being able to have something like that, you've got access to it. So it makes it super simple.
Well, what, Jake Mullins for like 50 cents?
No, believe it or not, somebody else owns it. Yeah, I mean, but we got beer.business, so everybody can kiss it because that's one of the best domain names ever. Yeah, seriously, can you believe that a couple of knuckleheads like us got that? That's awesome.
That's impressive.
How long from concept to launch did that take for you guys? So you're sitting, I mean, obviously you said it happened during COVID last year, but I mean, you were sitting around moping, your wife kicks you out of the house, tells you to go have fun with your friends, get a haircut. You guys come up with this idea, and how long before you went through beta testing to actual launch?
6 months and 12 days.
And did the site crash on the first day because you had so much business?
No, it didn't crash, thank God. We did have some bugs, of course, that we had to work through, but it did not crash, so we were very proud of that. During the beta, we found a lot of holes we had to fix, and so that was what the extra, basically, we had planned to have it open within 5 months. Right. But it took 6 months and 12 days. But that's what a beta's for. You know, you have to be able to go back, look at the data that you gathered, and make the decisions quickly to fix the problems and foresee any potential problems. And so we did, and we used that time wisely, in my opinion, and we were open within 6 months and 12 days.
Now,
so this would be a really I want to compound off that, Darren, if you don't mind. So I think this is a really important topic, especially for those listening that are interested in, some form of internet business. So you launched the business. Nobody's heard of Deri Dari, right? That's something you guys came up with. You got this new domain and all that kind of stuff. So where does it go from here? How did you guys market the business, get the word out? Because you're on the other side of the world. You've come up with a brand that nobody knows what the hell it means. You've got the website, but nobody knows how to get to it. So how do you get people there and start buying your product?
Correct. 3 things. We hired a PR firm in the United States in Philadelphia that we used during our beta. They were very successful. We continued. We started, you double down. So what you see works, you double down on. That worked. We doubled down on it. We started investing heavily in charitable organizations that gave food to the hungry. We were basically marketing ourselves with them. In other words, let's not only give these people who are being given free food from Mama T's in Philadelphia that put refrigerators on street corners, but let's give them a live chef, because not a lot of people, especially in lower income environments, know what to do with an artichoke. So we gave them a live chef so that they could learn how to cook that artichoke that they found in that fridge. And in return, they put Deri Dari on every single street corner and every single fridge and in every single flyer that was inside every single fridge. So that was great marketing for us. And then, of course, that caught the attention of a lot of the press. They wanted to know who we were. Then the big one, which you two, I'm sure, have heard a million times, social media. It's not dead yet. And so we invested heavily in a social media expert who came in, and her name is Kayla Montez, and she's amazing. And she does all of our marketing on Instagram and Facebook, and she started our YouTube page and that kind of stuff. So that's how we've gotten the word out so far. I purposefully have kind of taken some of the budget away over the past couple of weeks, just 3 weeks to be exact, from marketing, specifically because I'm ready to start kind of moving it into phase 2, and that's going to be a big push, and I want to save it for that.
Yeah.
But that's how we got the word out. Social media, and then hitting up culinary websites, culinary clubs, groups, just going up on their message boards and everything else and just getting our name known. Yeah. Nowadays, though, you can do most of that with social media, but I always found there's a lot of people, especially in the over 60 market, that just aren't going to really pay that much attention to Instagram. So we hit those message boards up, try to get them there.
So one of the things that you said that I think is interesting is, you got involved with these charitable organizations. Now, question for you. Did you get involved with these charitable organizations just because you thought it was a great idea to market the company, or also was there actually intent to do some good in the world?
Philanthropic intent. Yeah.
Oh, Jake, you're going to put me on the spot like that? Seriously?
Absolutely, I'm going to, because I think I know the answer.
The reality of it was, it was great marketing. It was great marketing for us, but at the same time, you have to understand, when my businesses crashed and when I saw an opportunity to not only help my family, but to help the families of chefs, to give these chefs another source of income. Many of them who didn't have a job, that got laid off from the mom and pop restaurant because they couldn't be open during the time of COVID, or had children at home and they wanted to spend an actual Christmas dinner with their kids. I mean, how many chefs can say they can do that? Not many. So enough. I felt, we are creating something. We at Deri Dari, the chefs and us, we work together to create something that is great for us, that is giving us something. So let's see what we can do to give back. And so that was really, it was twofold. In my mind, being the CEO, I wanted to make sure it was good marketing. So I chose businesses that I knew. Yeah, Prost.
That's
There's a perfect
beer,
head.
My friend.
That's a healthy head.
Beer. and a violent pour, as some would say.
I wanted to choose charities that I knew we could get a little bang for our buck, so to speak. But at the same time, it was a way for us to give thanks. You have to understand, the idea of a healthy meal, the idea of bringing people together around a dining room table, it's dying. Most people, when they're tired, they go hit this local street corner and pick up a burger or pick up a hot dog or something from Subway or whatever. And then they go home and they eat in front of the TV. The idea of sitting down and having a family meal, I find that it's lost in a lot of families these days. And we wanted to bring that back.
Not only the meal. But I'm actually going to I'm going to promote your business even more. The process of creating the meal, and believe it or not, Darren's been to my house. One of the reasons why we bought this house was because of the layout of the kitchen. Our kitchen, it's an open concept house, and our kitchen has a bar area where when we're cooking, everybody's involved. It's an experience. Right? Everybody's there. They're watching us cook. They're a part of, we taste shit as we go along, That is just as important as sitting down and having the meal. So I think what you guys are doing, it is a very important part of the human experience to we all, and I'll take this even a step further, because I've actually traveled the world. I know you've lived in Europe for 22 years. I've been to 65 countries. I've been all over the place. And I've been to third world countries. I've been to Muslim countries. I've been to Asia. I've been all over the place. I've seen more than most people will ever see. The one thing that I think the entire world has in common is we connect and we have the most deep human experiences with other people over a meal. That's the one thing. No matter where I was in the world, I would sit down and have a meal. I'd sit down in a devout Muslim country where I felt like I had nothing in common with people until we sat at the dinner table. and we laughed and we joked and we ate amazing food till I felt like I was going to explode.
Did they appreciate your bacon cologne that you were wearing?
Oh, I did take a little pork and put it in my pressure points because that's where you emanate the most fragrance.
Sorry. Bad point to place to inject humor. That's really what you're saying is really serious.
It's absolutely critical. And I'm glad that you guys are focused on that because it is a very, very important thing about just
Jake,
being human.
You have no idea how much I agree with you on that. And we wanted to take it a step further. And in my mind, that begins with the family and it begins with the children. I see kids today growing up and they watch their parents and they emulate them, of course, and they're going to go to those fast food restaurants. So what we decided to do, let's catch the kids when they're young. Mm-hmm. So in June and July, we did a kids cook camp where the kids came in and they got to cook with a chef for 3 to 5 days. And they got to learn how to make the foundations.
Look at how beautiful that is, man. Doesn't that make you a little jealous? I mean, honestly.
I tell you what, Line Creek, they do make some phenomenal beer.
Where did you do
I am
this cook
very
camp?
jealous.
You should be.
I'm sorry?
Where did you do the cook camp?
We did it online. It was perfect.
wow.
And
Oh,
so
that's cool,
basically the parents, they would set it up and then the kids got to meet kids from around the world. We had people sign up from from London, and we had one sign up from France. And we had a couple kids from New England. That's why it clicked in my mind. But we had them from all over the place sign up. They got to meet with other kids their same age, and they got to spend 3 days with a chef learning the foundations of how to cook. Wow. We sent them their own chef hat. We sent them their own foundational cooking stuff like utensils and stuff that they could use in the kitchen. And of course, a little storage area just for them, for their cooking utensils. And then at the end of it all, they had their final day where they got to cook something based on their age appropriate for their parents.
That's so cool. That's
awesome. And so for college kids, we taught them the foundations of how to eat oats and what meals you need for brain food. And so when you have to take that test, how they need to prepare the food for a week, exactly do their meal prep, etc. And for the young kids, it was just simply making pancakes for breakfast for mom and dad when they're hungover.
So I want to go back to something because we're having this great conversation. It's veered off topic, but I do want to go back and put a fine point on something. Because what started this conversation was you guys figured out that you can not only do something really good in the world, but there can also be benefit back to your company, right? So partnering with these organizations that were doing altruistic things, making the world a better place, doing nonprofit work. And I challenge people, like you can do two things at once. You can go out and do something that's in your heart. You can do something that's good for the world. Mm-hmm. You can do something that's charitable while at the same time benefiting. That's okay. That's good. I mean, I would much rather, if you're going to spend money somewhere,
right,
you can spend money on advertising, which you probably should. It's not that that's a bad thing. But if you can figure out, like, if there's a way to go support a charitable organization or to do something charitable that takes time and treasure, but also there's a benefit back to your business, why would you not do that?
Correct. And I tell you what, every charitable organization, especially in the United States, most of them have the marketing savvy to realize that's what you're there to do. You're there to help them, but at the same time, get a bang for your buck. And so they're there to help you create and market your brand, and at the same time get your dollar so that they can use it to help those people that need it.
Yeah.
And so especially the charitable organizations that you see are doing well, they've figured that trick out, and so those are the ones you might want to start looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So after you guys started your advertising campaign, you're doing all these things, and now the business is starting to, proverbially.
Got that?
I do got that.
Sure.
It's the Line Creek. It's a beautiful, healthy beer. Like, look at that, man. The head's still strong. I blame the beer. But your business is taking off, right? How was it doing in relation to what you guys expected? Did you have expectations on revenue and growth, and how did it do?
Yeah, I mean, of course we did. We put together several models. When you hit that startup world, you put together your high expectation, your reasonable expectation, your low expectation, and oh dear God, we're dying expectation.
Yep.
And something's desperately wrong. Throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
Something's wrong. So we put those
Everybody's got
together.
a plan until you get punched in the face.
Exactly. And so we hit up all of those. We're like, we're ready. Let's go. Let's go. And so when we launched, we had great sales and things were going really, really good. And then we just hit that plateau and we knew it was coming, but it was a little bit steeper than I thought it was going to be honest, which it forced my hand because I was getting comfortable with how the platform was working. And I was going to kept pushing back phase 2, kept pushing back that international expansion. And so when I saw those sales hit that, you always got to keep, anybody in business can tell you this, keep an eye on your numbers, keep an eye on your numbers. And when you see them hit any kind of that plateau, you got to be getting scared, look to the future, something's wrong. And so that, that jolted me. It kicked me in the behind and got me back up off the lazy boy and out of that, as my wife said, in the dirty underwear and sitting on the couch
your
with
wife
the hair.
had something to do with this too?
Always. She looks at the numbers too, Jake. She looks at the numbers too.
I see yourself slipping. Get up now.
So
now.
I mean, you understand that, and there is a certain point where, with a company, you are going to plateau. You should, but it should be in the black plateau, not in the red.
Yeah, hopefully.
But with your business, you can, like you said, you can go international with it. So I'm sure you set figures for the U.S. market. You hit that plateau. You mentioned that COVID, things started opening back up. People started going back out to the restaurants. And so you had there's 2 plan Bs that I want to ask you about. One was when you launched, did you have an emergency plan in case everything, if the shit hit the fan, did you have a backup plan for that during launch? We'll go with that question first. Go ahead.
Excuse me, guys. I had to cough real quick.
That's right.
My beer didn't have the head like yours did. So
Yours
to
is
answer
in
that
Lion Creek.
question,
I'm sorry, my friend.
I know I need it. I should see if I can get that stuff imported. But to answer your first question, did I have an oh shit plan if everything hit the fan during the beta? Yes, it was to immediately go to phase 2. Okay. My desire to have instant access of a chef or near to instant access of a chef. I keep saying instant because I keep pushing everybody to give me that. Basically, my team, my chefs, I'm like, no, you keep saying 30 minutes or less. No. I want instant access of a chef. And so,
because it usually means you're in the process of cooking and something's not going well.
Right.
Exactly.
I need tech support.
That's what we're looking for. That's what we're looking for.
Slice the end of my finger off. How do I do that?
They're not first aid. They're chefs.
Exactly. So that's kind of just that. You just kind of started leaning a little bit to where my my business model is moving towards. But with that in mind, that was the plan. Now we, as I said, bootstrapped this from the foundations up, and most of that money came from me. And so with that in mind, I knew I had a limited budget to work with. And if it got to a certain point where the numbers just were not hitting the black and it was just sticking in the red,
right,
I was going to have to pull it. And then we were going to take the platform, Anthony, myself, and Jonathan, and see if we could sell the platform itself, because it's just a beautifully laid out platform for anything. You could use it for finding a plumber. I mean, you could use it for anything. And so that was always our emergency backdoor. Oh, dear God, we have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Oh, dear Lord, what do we do kind of thing.
It's a good plan to have, though. Having a plan is better than not having anything at all. So that's good. Right?
Something else I want to talk about, because you said you guys hit the plateau, and you've had this backup plan or plan B or phase 2 or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I have I've struggled with in my life, and in the last several years I've come to, I guess, use wisdom to figure this out a little bit more.
Podcasting with me.
Yes, it's awful.
All right.
But first of all, we as people, we make the most progress. We become better in times of struggle. And when you reflect back on your own life, you're going to realize that the times that were the hardest are the times that created the most character, that improved your skills the most, if you leaned into it, if you kept going and didn't just say, the hell with it, and gave up. So you got all this skill development. But the other thing is, when you're driving towards something like you guys are, you started this thing from scratch, you got these great goals and dreams and this vision. So many times people in our situations, we don't enjoy the journey. You know, we're like, we're not there yet. So you keep pushing to get there. But I've learned that the journey, the plateaus, the struggles, okay, it's time for phase 2. Well, that's life. That's fun. That's actually where you can enjoy your own path in life, your own self-improvement the most, if you allow it. If you don't fixate on where you're going as much as on the way there, I'm becoming better. Have you thought about that?
Jake, I'll tell you a story, and not very many people know this. When we launched Deri Dari,
Now a lot of people are going to know it.
in the first 3 months of getting the platform up and running, the financial struggles of my family, myself, the business, getting it up and running. I took everything I had, my entire family nest egg, threw it into Deri Dari. The stress I put on myself and put on my family was horrible. And I kept driving myself harder and harder to get the outcome that I wanted, driving my team, driving myself, stressing my family, to the point where my wife was ready to leave me. She's like, I'm Bavarian. I don't need this. I'm out, you know. You can cut your own hair for all I care. So,
I don't think women in the U.S. would be any different, my friend.
What ended up happening, though, was heartbreaking. I got sick. I ended up in the hospital. They did all kinds of tests on me. I was suffering from some weird face pain. I was pain in my neck, my back. They diagnosed me wrongly with trigeminal neuralgia, which if you Google trigeminal neuralgia, it's called the
I
suicide
don't even know how to
disease.
spell that or say it.
Well, if
hell?
you Google right now, if you go to Google and you type in suicide disease, that's what it is. Because 60% of the people who contract it, they commit suicide. It's that painful. I was in the hospital for quite some time. They eventually let me out. They put me on all kinds of drugs, anti-seizure drugs, all kinds of crazy stuff. I couldn't walk. I couldn't talk. I couldn't drive my kids to karate. I couldn't do anything.
Body was just overstressed.
Yeah, I pulled the team together and I said, guys, I got to slow down. And you know what happened was when I took my finger off the trigger, that's when my team began to really shine. Without me hovering over them and just constantly on them, they began to shine. And they said, Jake, we're going to take over. Don't worry about it. We will be there for you. And boy, they you know, I'm bringing a tear to my eye right now, but they came through. And what happened with me was my wife and I, we worked things out, and I started doing a lot of yoga. And I went to the dentist, and they were like, oh, it's not trigeminal neuralgia. You just have like 15 different problems in your jaw. And so I spent a lot of time in a dentist chair, something like 15 appointments where
Jesus.
I had like 2 root canals. I got 1 false tooth, this whole bone. Something was wrong with that. I don't know.
Wow.
Lord have mercy. All right, so.
Oh, that was pleasant. But to make a long story, Jake, to bring back to your point, what I realized after all of that is just what you said. There is so much pleasure in the journey, and you have to enjoy it. And if you don't enjoy it, it's just going to kill you. So that's what we've been doing ever since.
Thank you for saying that. There's a couple of things that we need to unpack there. Okay, first and foremost, this is why Darren and I, in doing this podcast, we have an absolute love affair with entrepreneurs. And, you know, one day you're going to be sitting in front of a room and you're going to be talking about the success of Deri Dari and everything you guys have done and, you know, all that this platform has evolved into. And you're going to gloss over this story. And I don't ever want you to gloss over it, because so many people that reach success in life, they do this. They're like, yeah, it was hell, you know. But get into the raw physicality of it, because a lot of times people see successful entrepreneurs and they've created wealth for themselves in this incredible business, and they're like, oh, well, yeah, it's easy for you because of X, Y, and Z. And what a lot of times, what we as entrepreneurs fail to articulate to people is how fucked up it was in the beginning. How much stress there was in putting everything on the line. I can commiserate with this because I've done the same. You put it all out there. You go big. You start investing. You start grabbing that nest egg and saying, fuck it, man, I'm swinging for the fences. I'm going for it. That is amazing, because that's what makes the world turn. You know, in every economy around the world, it's not these huge corporations that make commerce work. It's us. It's us taking these risks, taking swings like this. And I think that that's phenomenal. So number one, don't ever gloss over this as you continue to evolve this story. Always tell that as raw as you can, because people need to know it. Because a lot of times, this is when people get into that spot. Oh, look at that! That's your motivation.
Exactly. This is Miriam. She just got her face painted, as you can see by her sister.
Hi, Miriam.
This is for those of you who are just audio only, my youngest daughter just came and jumped up on the screen. Wanted to say hi. This
She's
is
beautiful.
Miriam. She is my youngest. And yeah, so as far as Jake, you're right. That's the motivation.
Yeah, man.
You have to remember that it's a journey, it's fun, and you're doing it for a reason. You're doing it for a reason so that this one can, get tickled. And that kind of stuff.
Guten Abend. Guten
By
Abend.
the way,
Miriam.
do dad jokes work in German?
Papa,
Was ist los?
I wanted to ask, can I go up to the Bach and take my swimsuit? Jonas isn't Felix up there.
Ja, natürlich, was du willst. Viel Spaß. Deine Schwester könnte auch gehen, wenn sie willst. We live on the side of a mountain, and we have a little stream right above our house, and so the kids are going to go jump in the water because it's really hot outside right now.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah. So do dad jokes work in German? Just curious.
Not as well as they do in English.
They don't
Because you
translate.
sound so angry when you say them. Is that what it is?
True, very true. The
There's
German language
nothing
is just
pretty about
hilarious.
the language.
I know it's such an
I
angry
always tell
language.
people, you turn around and you say, "Du bist ein Schmetterling," and they're like, "What did you
Yes.
just say?" And it's like, "You're a butterfly." And it's like it doesn't translate very well at all.
You're an angry butterfly.
But what I
So
going
hold on.
back to what
There's one
you're
other
saying,
thing. There one more point to this. Okay. So first and foremost, I really appreciate you telling that story as raw as you did, and continue to do it. But the other thing is, as you evolve, that this business, you realized you've got to rely on other people. And I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, this is probably one of the scariest things. You get
Very
to a
true.
point where it's like, I need to rely on other people. I need to delegate. I need to rely on their skills. And other people are going to do things differently than you. Doesn't mean it's wrong. Doesn't mean it's not as good. In fact, most of the time, this is the hardest thing for us to admit. A lot of times, their way is better.
Yeah. It's funny. Stephen Kuhn, one of my mentors, he wrote a book called The Humble Alpha. And in it, he says, you have to trust your team. You have to be able to delegate. And then what he always did is when a member of his team would come to him with a question, with a problem that needed to be solved, he's like, well, give me 3 answers and come back to me. They would come back to Stephen with 3 answers. He's like, okay, which one do you believe in the most? He's like, this one. Okay, well, that's the one you're going to do. Let's do it. And so he just kept doing that with his team. He's like, all right, give me three solutions to the problem. And they would come back with 3 solutions. And eventually he's like, okay, this is the one you believe in. Let's go with it. Until eventually they stopped asking him for his advice. They just simply went with the solution that they knew was best. And as long as, this goes back to Steve Jobs, and he said this, as long as everybody's rowing the boat in the same direction, you're going to get to the same location.
Right.
So just keep those boats, keep everybody rowing in the same straight line. You're all going to end up at the same place. And
It's
as
funny.
you said, Jake, they're going to do it differently.
I had a mentor tell me once, and this is probably one of the most profound things that helped me in delegation in this whole struggle of letting other people do things for me. He said, I want you to think of delegation like a GPS map. He said, if you go in and tell your GPS that you want to go to an address, it'll pull up multiple different routes. They all get you to the same place. Yours is not right. Yours is not better. Yours is not superior. They'll all get you there. So just be comfortable with any route that gets you to your address. And I sat there after he said that, and I felt like an idiot. Because this was coming off of a conversation where I was telling him that there's somebody on my team that was doing something, they were doing it wrong. And he's like, no, they're not doing it. They're doing it different. Will they end up in the same place? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, that's because you haven't let them drive. You haven't let them try what their solution is. And he was right. And I felt like an idiot.
well, you started out, you said, in the beginning when you were launching this business, and you even said it, that you relied on other people. You said, anybody who's going to start a business, rely on other people to help you, attorneys, accountants, whoever it is, before you launch. And you did that. But then all of a sudden, you launched and you put all this pressure on you, and you forgot your first rule at that point.
I did, Darren.
Was it intentional? Because you're like, oh shit, I've got everything in here, and it's me that's going to make this work. And
I think twofold, Darren, it was twofold. One, it was I now have the responsibility of these chefs. I have to make sure I can help them get food on their table for their families, for their kids. I have to feed my wife and my kids. The stress of, and every entrepreneur can tell you this, that period where you're this close to launching, and when it's actually launched, that little moment, that little window in between the two, which can be a day, a week, or a month, it's very stressful, especially when the money starts going down. When the money starts to run out, you're
my
like,
runway is this
goodness.
long, and I better get the shit moving now.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's when I decided, okay, well, I'm going to do what I always do is I'm going to micromanage this. I'm going to fix it myself the way that I know is going to work. And
First mistake.
that was it right there,
Yeah.
Darren. You're right. It was a mistake. And what you have to do in life is find those mistakes and, correct them as fast as you can.
But also, in the
Learn
same
from it.
vein, you also have to understand that founders and people that take these risks and people that do stuff like this are also not right. So we're a little half-cocked.
No, we're not right at all.
Yeah, and so there are times where people will say, like, like the Beer and Business podcast. People said, don't do it. That's a stupid idea. Nobody's going to listen to a comedy show with business. And yet here we are. We're top 5%ers. Boom. Loving
Top
that.
5%.
Way to go.
But, so there are times when you as a founder, you do need to be the one that says, that's not going to work. This is going to work. I'm going to lead people. I am going to take a risk. I'm going to not listen to naysayers. But then there are times where you do need to lean on people. And so I think this is the ultimate struggle
It's a
as an
balance.
entrepreneur, is figuring out when to listen, when to take advice, when not to listen, when to say, fuck you, you don't know what you're talking about, I do. And how do I lean on people, and when do I do it myself?
Just asking for help.
Right.
is
And
a
it's,
big thing. Yeah.
if you can figure that out, I don't care what your business is, if you can figure out when to listen and when to lead, you will find success, and no matter what you're doing. I firmly believe that.
Agreed.
I agree with you 100%. 100%, Jake. It is a balancing act. And sometimes you make mistakes. And that's when you got to make sure you have a good team to lean on.
Make them
All the time.
by the hour.
You know what I love? I love the fact that, when I went to the site, I was like, this would be great for a dinner party.
Yeah,
sorry.
man.
You have a bunch of people over, you've got it all, and it's like, as you said, it's a communal thing that you do in the kitchen. Everybody loves to be around the kitchen. All houses now are built that way with that open kitchen model because they realize the importance of it.
Yeah.
But having that chef there, you've had a chef in your house preparing, but as you and your group are hanging out and you've got one of Jake's chefs there telling everybody what to do, and they all have their little bit and pieces. I just see that as a huge, dinner parties for Deri Dari dinner parties. That is, you can send me the checks later.
But going
love
off of
that
what
idea.
Darren said, and going back to something you said very early in our interview, I think that your business model not only survives a post-COVID world, but thrives, because we had Chef Michael on the show several months ago, and what he did was he created a business model where he lost his job because of COVID, restaurants shut down here, and so he started to go do private dining for people. He would come into your home and cook these 5-star meals in front of you and serve you, and he'd bring all of his stuff, and we actually did it in our house, and it was an amazing experience. Amazing. Way better than any restaurant experience we'd ever been to. It was so intimate. It was so fun. He was interactive. He was walking us through what he was doing. You don't get that at a restaurant. They bring the plate out, right?
Exactly.
Same with your business model. I think that even as the world opens back up, there's a market for this. As Darren said, dinner parties or date nights or whatever. We've all been to restaurants a million times. But how many times have you interacted with a chef who teaches you how to make pasta like an Italian chef? I think that's
Exactly.
fucking cool.
Yeah,
One of our top dollar marketing right now, let me rephrase that. Some of the biggest money that I'm spending on marketing right now is for the American military. I want mom and dad to be able to cook with their son or daughter who's stationed overseas.
Oh, man.
Or
that's so
grandma
cool.
our grandma to be able to cook with the grandkids who are stationed with mom and dad in Stuttgart or in Kuwait or wherever. I want that family connection again. And so what we've done is, of course, our platform, you can then set it up so that you have 3 or 4 links, 3 or 4 households with the chef, so that you can have that experience with family.
It's brilliant, man. It's freaking brilliant. Because like me, I've got, family all over the country. I've moved away from my family. I have no family that lives near me, but if we could share a meal virtually and everybody's, interacting with the chef, and that's really brilliant. By the way, if you're not watching, Darren just left the studio. You know what he's doing, Jake?
He's going to the bathroom?
Yeah, he's
I was about to say,
he's got the bladder of a hamster, and he's off peeing, and I can say whatever I want because he's not here. He does this every freaking show, man. It's like the ones where he makes it to the end without peeing, or I feel like God himself has stepped in and said, Darren, I'm going to allow you not to pee today. It's freaking crazy.
Well, Jake, I don't know for those only audio listeners could have noticed this, but he got up real fast. I mean,
he does. Like, he'll sit there. I swear he's over there, like, silently suffering, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, I'm not going to make it to the end. I got to go pee. And then off he goes. So the whole joke here was, early in the podcast, we weren't on video at all, so it was only audio. So he would sneak out of the room as I'm talking to somebody, and he'd go and he'd touch the thermostat, and then he would disappear. And he'd come back, and I'm like, what were you doing? Like, oh, I was adjusting the thermostat. It's warm in here. But that was, he adjusted the thermostat to cover the fact that he was actually out peeing. So that's like the whole code word for I'm going to pee is I'm going to adjust the thermostat. And it's just like an old inside joke that's hilarious. So ask him, he's getting ready to walk back in. Ask him what the temperature is. What's that? Oh, I just was... Jake wondered where you were, and I told him that it was a little warm in the room.
Sorry. I did turn it down a couple degrees on my way.
See? I was adjusting the thermostat and the toilet.
You saw me adjust the thermostat on my way
to the toilet.
And go to the toilet. Yes. As we said, auf den
I'm not
Badezimmer.
bullshitting you. This is for real.
Auf the Badezimmer. Auf the Badezimmer.
So,
I love it.
I don't know if you covered this. Tell me if you did while I was gone.
We just talked about you.
Why not? Why not? We'll probably actually get comments now from our viewers. Your projections, and you said you're really on track. I mean, on point. It's not like a lot of people when they do their projections, they're like, well, within this year. You said you're off by 3 weeks right now with your projections. How did you set that up, and how often do you go back and review it and adjust? Your plan or your goals on a yearly basis or monthly basis. You have to.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Basically, Jonathan and I, until he moved to the States, we were neighbors. And so he and I would get together at least once a week, and we go through the numbers, especially when we were hitting all those angel investors up. Because you don't want to throw out numbers that are just coming out of thin air. Right. It is actually coming out of thin air, but you have to have some foundation to them. And so we worked them. I mean, I learned Excel. I learned how to use not just Excel. What's this one called on Mac? Numbers. I used all these different programs to try and just start playing with them and figure out what would work if, the marketing that we were using focused on the city of Philadelphia, using the PR firm was getting this many bookings, we assumed, per week. With what we were doing with the American military was pulling this many numbers, and you could try and play with those projections. And we're only about 3 weeks off, but at the same time, though, it is just, you have to keep going back to them. Mm-hmm. Every startup book I read, because I'm a tour guide. When I started this whole thing, I was a tour guide. I was a business owner, but not in the startup kind of mindset. And so every book I read said, know your numbers, know your numbers, know your numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and so
absolutely,
I did.
Man.
And the 2 things that I remember is know your numbers and learn the technology.
Yeah.
So I went and learned Excel. Mm-hmm.
I'll take it a step further because I'm huge on this, man. I talk to our real estate team. We talk about this all the time. Goals don't necessarily have to be numbers, right? They can be accomplishments or... Mm-hmm. So I have a spreadsheet. Every year, I put all my goals on the spreadsheet for the business and then also for personal, because the business feeds my personal goals. So like this year I had a goal to put a carport in for my RV and to finish my bathroom.
4 vacations. Was
Yeah,
one family
yes,
vacations.
exactly.
You had
Vacations
4
were in there.
family vacations.
I actually track this shit on a spreadsheet, Jake. I'm not kidding.
I
And
believe it.
every single month, I go through every one of those goals, and the ones that have a number that I can calculate, I put the percentage in. What percentage run rate do I have for that yearly goal? For the stuff that is not, that's more accomplishment based, like, deploy a CRM. Darren is one of our goals this year. That I just color code. Am I red, yellow, green on track to do that? And I do it every month for every goal. And some people will say, like, God, that seems like overkill. It is not. Because every month I get surprised. Because I have a list of, it's probably like 20, 25 goals on there, Darren. I get surprised every month because you think you're in the business. You're working your ass off. It's fast paced. And you think like where you're on track for and where your focus needs to be. And then you stop everything. You literally stop the world and say, okay, I'm going to work on the spreadsheet. I'm going to track everything. And you go in, you do your numbers, you track it, and you go, well, shit, I'm not as aligned with where I thought I was. I'm actually doing better in this area than I thought. And I really need to spend some attention in this other area. It's shocking to me. And I've been doing this for years, dude. Years.
Yeah.
And I still surprise myself because you just get so in the weeds working on your business that laddering up and just looking at those goals can be a total game changer.
I was just Googling on my computer trying to remember the name, Jake, but there was a couple of books that I read about that. And it's one of them, it was something about habits, atomic habits. I can't remember the name of the book.
Yeah.
But in the first chapter, he talks about the British cycling team and how they were the worst they had ever been. And the new coach came in and he said, these guys, they're British, their teeth are crooked. Oh my gosh, their teeth are crooked. Their shorts are too short. I mean, they need to shave.
And they're British.
So, but in any case, he
I have
started
a lot of British friends. Just kidding. Not really.
He started by creating just little achievements, little things. He's like, okay, well, the first thing we're going to do, brush your teeth. Literally brush your teeth
until it's crispy.
Yes, please don't serve me sweaty, floppy bacon. That's ridiculous.
Atomic Habits.
Who the hell thought that was a good idea?
It's Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Is that what it is?
Thank you.
Yes, that's it.
Thank you, Darren. So in that book, which is an exquisite book, if you guys haven't picked it up, please do. All your listeners, it's a great read. He talks about how those little changes made such a huge difference and how they began to add up. And I look at that as a goal in my life. I look at, every month I'll just take a moment where I journal in the morning and I'm like, okay, well, this month it's the first. All right. I make a list of things that I want to achieve this month, personal and in business.
Good
and
for you,
I look at them as goals and
you.
I'm like, if I get to the end of the month, I look at the new, what I'm going to make for the next month, and I look at what I did for the old month, and I compare. And it's not only do you give yourself that little brownie point, like, yes, I deserve an extra beer tonight. Yes. But you also, exactly. But you also, you give yourself, exactly. You give yourself, that motivation to keep going, that you've done something good, and that you need that pat on the back every now and then, because not a lot of times are you going to get it, especially in this game.
So, yeah, man. I you know what? Great job. And not enough people do this, and I just cannot put a fine enough point on this exercise. And I talk to a lot of people. Darren, we talk about it all the time in our meetings for the real estate business, and I just cannot stress enough how important it is just to take stock. And one thing that you said that I didn't emphasize is celebrating your wins, right? It's so easy for us. Because if you're driven, he's winning right now. If you're not watching on video, he's drinking a beautiful German beer. That is winning. That's winning, Darren. It's winning on an unbelievable level. It's the most amazing beer. I don't care if it's German. It's beautiful.
He's going to pull out a yard in a second.
Oh, I know.
Do half a yard for us or something.
Das Boot.
No, sadly, no. I don't even have a Moss glass over here.
Oh, wow. But seriously, it's so easy for us if we're driven and we're driving towards something and we've got this long-term goal that we don't stop and celebrate those little wins. And one of the things that doing this does is like, I had all these goals for the month and I hit them, and I'm not at my vision yet, but good job, man. I did a good thing this month.
Exactly.
And believe it or not, guys, I just read this, so I read a lot of stuff. I'm, forever
Really?
reading different. Yeah,
He reads
I
everything
read
on the
some
bathroom
stupid shit,
walls.
and I read some business books. I read all kinds of stuff. And I was recently reading about testosterone. Do you know that winning actually releases testosterone?
Does
so
it?
for men, yes, if you're middle-aged like us and struggling with tea,
Win a lot more.
you by doing these things and by achieving goals, it actually is one of the biggest contributors to your level of testosterone. So men,
Interesting.
put that in your testosterone pipe and smoke
There
it.
you go. There you go.
Heck yeah.
So, my next question for you, Jake, is
Look it up, folks.
There
It's
you
true.
go.
It's true. That's a true story. It's amazing.
What's the one thing you learned from running your travel agency business that you thought was like the most important thing? It's like, I need to carry this over when I open Deri Dari.
Deri Dari.
Deri Dari. Son of a pup.
This is, we've
Right
said
there.
it like
This is what I
35,
like,
3
Darren.
times.
100
Deri
times.
Deri Dari. Deri
Darren,
Dari.
I just told you this is what happens. People
Yeah.
mess it up and they have to say it again. So I get so much free press because they're like, "Oh, Deri Dari, Deri Dari. How do you say it again, Jake?"
So, what did you learn from the travel business? And you're like, you carried it over to Deri Dari, and it's been the best or the worst thing? I'd take either one. Like, you thought it would work in the travel business, and it failed with Deri Dari, and then the best thing that's worked from one business to the next.
The worst thing was in the travel business using online travel agencies such as Viator, Expedia, Get Your Guide, and Tours by Local. These companies bring in chefs, they do a little vetting, and then these chefs create their own platform. I'm sorry, these tour guides. Let me stop. These tour guides create their own identity using these online travel agencies. So tour guides and travel companies such as mom and pop private tour guide companies like myself, or say big bus travel companies that take groups of 45 people to Neuschwanstein Castle every day. Okay. The online travel agency, they simply provide you with the mold. As the business, you then shape it. And you set your pricing, you set your descriptions, you set your tour photos, you set everything. And yeah, they usually have some form of a standard, but you're going to follow it because that's your bread and butter. When I went into Deri Dari, I expected the chefs to react in the same way as the tour guides. They didn't. Chefs don't think like that. They don't see that as working. They don't understand that technology. That there's a little bit of a disconnect.
Yeah.
They're used to
Well, they've never
working
had
in
to
a
do
kitchen.
that before, right?
Exactly.
They're
They're used to working in a
those
kitchen where
chefs
everything
are
was
freaking
hands-on.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as Jonathan kept trying to tell me, he's like, yeah, we'll get tons of chefs to sign up because this is an opportunity for them to make a secondary source of income. And like I mentioned earlier, Darren, they have the opportunity to spend Christmas dinner with their kids. But we're going to have to teach them because they, as he likes to say, are squirrel oriented. So in other words, like, so what do you,
Squirrel-oriented. Totally plagiarizing that one.
What? So, I mean, you can keep them focused for the time it takes for them to prepare a meal. So it's like, I can keep them focused for, 3 to 5 minutes. But after that, they're like, what? They're gone. And so he's like, they're very squirrel oriented. So you got to make sure that nut is big enough that they're going to keep looking at it and they're going to stay focused on it. So that was something I had to learn. I thought I could just bring them, give it to them. I give you the platform. And, they would then basically shape it and do their own marketing, do their own advertising. Yay, we're going to make this great. No. They're like, squirrel. And, they couldn't stay focused.
Yeah.
But to their defense, as you said, Jake, this wasn't something they had ever done before. So I was trying to ask them to learn something that quick. Now, the thing that I brought over that did work was organization. Being a tour guide, you have to have everything organized. I mean, I know from the moment I pick up a client to the moment I drop them off, every single thing that's going to happen throughout that day. You may decide that you want to go and see something else, but I already have it in my mind how that's going to work into the schedule, where the tickets are going to be, where the bathrooms are going to be, where we're going to go for lunch, where we're going to stop for coffee and cake, where we're going to stop for beer if dad's an alcoholic. All the stuff that you need on any given day, I have available. I've got in the back of my car ponchos, umbrellas, Band-Aids, gummy bears for the kids, all that stuff is just
Your
there.
liquor.
Being prepared. Your liquor, I got liquor, I got everything. I mean, you have to be prepared. And so that organizational skill, that preparation that I brought and I had as a tour guide, I brought to Deri Dari. And I still keep it today. So I just like to have everything organized before I do anything. So just simply on this podcast, everything that's behind me is there on purpose. I mean, you have to be prepared.
I only keep seeing half of one woman's head on that center photo. It's the
Woman?
one who's lower. That's
Those
cute.
are the
What is
kids.
that? There's your girls.
Seriously, Darren? Woman?
Darren is
Yeah, your younger one keeps getting blocked out.
Darren keeps squinting because he's not wearing his
There
freaking
we go.
glasses, so therefore he sees shapes.
Beautiful.
He does not see people.
What? I hear shapes too. I don't hear actual words. I just hear
Yeah.
sounds.
Yeah, I mean, I have to podcast with this guy. It's
I mean,
not easy.
Like he said, his chefs are have
Talk
that
about dealing
swirl.
with adversity. He sits across from me.
I always say a chef. His chefs probably they can make a Schwarzwald Torte faster. They can say the word. So, you know.
Exactly. They can do that deconstructed pot pie.
Yes.
Man.
Well, listen, man, I want to encourage everybody listening to go to deridari.com. And if that's too much for you to remember, let's say your name is Darren Flanagan and you can't remember a fucking thing.
Huh?
All you got to do is go to your show notes. So whatever you're listening in, iHeartRadio or, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, just look at the notes and you'll see that there is a link to the website, deridari.com in there. We made it really easy for you. I want to encourage everybody to try this out. I'm going to try it, dude. I'm so stoked about this.
I can't wait.
I'm super excited. And I waited to hear the concept of the business until we recorded the podcast because I kind of understood a little bit, but not all of it. Now that I know, I'm so excited about this because food is such an important part of my life. And honestly, it's an important part of everybody's life. And because it keeps you alive, this is kind of an important thing. But if you're not using food as a social platform, as a platform to become closer to your friends and family, you should. And this is a great way to do it, man. I think you guys
Well,
are
thank
going to
you.
hit it out of the park. I love this concept.
Well, Jake, we're excited, man. We are super excited, especially with phase 2 coming in, with that near to instant access of a chef and how you are going to have the ability to contact a chef so quickly, have him or her in your kitchen, help you, as you just said earlier, with that meal that might be going wrong or with that, might I say, CSA box that's sitting in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have that ability within weeks. So that's what I'm really excited about. And I cannot wait for you and your customers to try it. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Personal request. Can we get some barbecue experts on the platform too?
Yes, we will. We already have one, we had one, but he actually left the platform. I was so heartbroken. He ended up getting a job working at one of the biggest barbecue restaurants in New York City. So he's like, I have to go, guys.
Barbecue in New York
like-
City? Is that even a thing?
It is now.
I know.
Because
What
they
the
got
hell?
him.
Now. Yeah, he was in Alabama. He was in Alabama. He went to New York, and now he's working there. But it was heartbreaking losing him.
The
But
hard
Jonathan,
part of that, though, is doing the prep for that because it's like, first of all, you got to slow cook this
Slow,
for
slow,
a
yeah.
long time. And so, what do you do with that chef in the meantime? It's like, tune in at
barbecue is a lot about the prep.
the end.
And I'm a huge barbecue guy,
100%.
so I know that. Once it goes on the smoker, it's like, you can talk about process and all that, but it's really all about how you prepare the meat, how you season it, the temperature, your
That dry
cooking
rub.
utensil, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So,
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
you guys have tons of runway, tons of opportunity. I'm excited to see where you go. I'm excited to try it out myself. And I hope that I'm not being too forward, but I think we've got a friend in Bavaria now, and hope we can stay
Anytime.
in touch. And
yeah.
I might be able to smuggle you some Lion Creek. Just saying.
please bring me some Lion Creek. But hey, on the other side, of course, if you guys want to come over here and go to the Oktoberfest or go to Krampus where the
I'm,
evil demons whip you.
I
like
am
that.
telling you right now, color me very interested.
Yeah.
I am.
Krampus is an experience, though, in itself, as I
Yeah.
understand it. So tell
Oh
people
my
to Google
gosh,
it. I mean,
Krampus.
Google Krampus
Oh my!
if
All right,
you want.
we're gonna take just a real quick. We got to take a quick step away from Deri Dari so I can talk about this. Krampus is an evil demon, of course, beats people. Literally, we call it vacationing with fear. And so we go to the town of Berchtesgaden where these evil demons these young men who are single dress up in these costumes that they smell like alcohol. And they basically march through the streets being led by St. Nicholas and these little children, Christians. And as they wander through the streets, people come out and like, what are these people doing? And then they just get whipped by these evil demons because they have these hand braided whips. And it hurts. It really hurts. And it's why we call it vacationing with fear. And it is so much fun. I cannot even tell you. I don't like pain. I'm not one of those weird masochists, but this is fun.
Yes, you are. You're an entrepreneur.
Very true, Jake.
Different guy.
But it is a lot of fun just simply because we get to go and we get to drink hot mulled wine. We get to go into the salt mine. We get to go learn from them why they do it.
Yeah.
We get to learn the history of how it goes back to the fact that oftentimes families would lose children in the winter. And you didn't want to blame yourself or your child freezing to death. Right. So you would say this evil demon came and stole your child.
Well, it's
and then it comes to, go ahead.
This is actually one of the reasons why I get so upset about, a lot of what's going on in the U.S. and really around the world. You got cancel culture and people freaking out on the internet and stuff. And one of the things that I think is really important is to preserve tradition. Mm-hmm. That's one of the great things that I got when I traveled the world is you got all this great tradition. And in the U.S., for some reason, we're trying to erase a lot of tradition and the way things have been. And I just don't get it, man. I think it's so important to connect us back to where we came from. You know what I mean? I think that's important.
Well, learning the history of Compass would be a lot of fun.
It'd be so much fun. And you know
it's
what?
Crazy.
The entire time, I imagine you're enjoying a lot of beautiful German beer made with a German purity
mulled
law.
spice wine.
Yeah, we drink the hot mulled spice wine, and we tip a little rum in there to, of course, make sure the beatings don't hurt as much. And then we go
Drop
to
a
two
cinnamon
separate
stick in.
breweries. Yeah, then we go to two separate breweries, one in Berchtesgadener. We go to the Hofbrau Brewery, where they give us a little walking tour of the facility. And then we go to a schnapps factory, where we get a whole tour of the schnapps factory. And then the Krampus demons show up, and we give them schnapps and pray that they don't beat us. And then, we go to the city of Salzburg, where we go to Stiegel, or Steigl, I think is what it's called in Austrian, which is basically the worst canned beer that Austria has ever created. Famously, it's bad. Now,
like
they
shit,
are
drink
making...
this.
Oh, God, but they're making some really good small batch beers.
Amazing.
They do
This is the best. But no, they're making some really good some small batch beers.
Yeah.
But their canned beer that they put on the shelf of every gas station in Austria, it's how I lost most of my hair.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just
Killing you fastly.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty brutal. But we go there, and they have a great view over the city of Salzburg, and we go meet their Krampuses and go to the second largest Christmas market in all of Austria and wander the streets. It's a lot of fun.
If you've never been to Germany, you have to go. And the beer scene is so cool because it's not like the U.S. We were talking about this before the show. In the U.S., you've got like every experimental beer you could possibly think of in the brewery. And there's like almost 8,000 breweries in the U.S. now. It's insane. So the beer scene is really cool here. The liquid is amazing. Like what I'm drinking right now, delish. But what Germany has is history and tradition.
Purity.
You have not lived until you've been served Kelch beer in Cologne. You have not lived until you've been to some of these historic breweries. It is awesome, man.
It's so much
everybody
fun.
should do it.
To know the foundation of beer and to know how it saved us,
The world.
to save humanity. I mean,
Absolutely.
You think about how a city grows. It's going to grow from a water source, water, salt, fortification. Those are three things you need when you have a city. You need the salt to cure your meat. You need the water, of course, for liquid nourishment. And then you need fortification to ensure that those crazy barbarians don't come and kill me. But once you have those three things, the city's going to begin to grow. And as it grows, without a proper toilet, the water you're going to be drinking going to be stanky. So you're going to get sick. And so beer was just a great way to clean that water. Basically, by
I
the
highly
act of
recommend. There's a documentary called "How Beer Saved the World."
boiling. Yep.
Fascinating. Everybody
Jake's
should
right.
watch it.
Jake, that's exactly. It's really.
It is
great book.
absolutely
documentary.
true. Beer is why we have civilization today.
Very true. And that's exactly what I was quoting from right there. As the city grows, the act of brewing, the act of alcohol itself, it purifies the water. Saint Arnulf of France, he was the first one to realize it and started feeding beer to all the children in his congregation. And my favorite part about his story is his holy miracle of after his death, the people carrying his coffin to the cemetery stopped in an inn to have a glass of beer, and they only had one at the end. But when the guys left the bar, they were all hammered drunk because the beer never ended.
That's awesome. Well, Jake, listen, man, I really appreciate you coming on the show today, telling your story. Again, I'm going to encourage all of our subscribers, go to deridari.com, DERIDARI.com.
Mm-hmm.
If you're like Darren, you can't remember that, it's in your show notes. It's in the video if you're watching. So if you can't find it, shame on you because you've had way too many line creeks. But, man, this has been awesome. I love your story. I love the business model. I think you guys are going to have a ton of success. And I'm excited to try it myself, man. And I appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us and our audience.
Oh, guys, thank you so much for allowing me to be on Beer and Business. Darren, Jake, it has been an absolute pleasure.
This is going to change your life. It'll improve your sex life, everything, man. So you're welcome.
You got it. Exactly. And everybody out there, I've been watching these guys drink Lion Creek, and man, does it look good. Enjoy.
It is amazing. Well, folks, we appreciate you tuning in. We will see you next week.
See you.